This is a quick webinar for the Orca Books Co-op directors for people interested in joining the board or running for the board of this fall. So we're hoping to have elections in October, and I want to just kind of go through what the responsibilities are for the board and give people an idea of what they're getting into, and hopefully understanding that it's going to be a fun and exciting year for the board once we get the elections done. So first I want to start with just talking about what a co-op is, and Orca Books is a cooperative, and so there's a set of definitions, values, and principles that go into that. Basically, a cooperative is an organization that people voluntarily join to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. It's based on a set of values and also principles, which probably most people know, and sometimes they're called the Rockdale principles, but that's open and voluntary membership, democratic control, member economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, information, and training, and cooperation among cooperatives, and concern for community. We can go deeper into that in other trainings, but basically these values were established 25 years ago as a way of really setting cooperatives apart from other types of corporations. Orca is a particular type of cooperative. It's what we call a solidarity co-op, and that means that the cooperative ownership is based on different groups of people within the community. So Orca has 4 groups. There are consumer members. There are what we call low-income members, and this is to just differentiate different groups within the Orca community, like students or people that may not or may be retired on fixed incomes, etc. There are the workers of the bookstore, the staff collective, and then finally we have a role for like-minded organizations that would like to support and keep the bookstore thriving in downtown Olympia. The board, as I'll go into, is divided amongst 3 of these groups. Organizational members don't have representation on the board, but they can vote at the membership meetings, and that means voting on bylaws and other membership proposals. So the role of the board is essentially what's called governance, and that is basically the process by which co-ops engage the business. This creates empowering different groups to act, how they make decisions, how they delegate authority, deciding how people can join the co-op and be part of it, and also then what type of decisions they make. In general, good governance is consensus oriented, and Orca does use the consensus model of decision making. It's transparent to its members, it's accountable to its members, should be responsive, focused on equitable and inclusive within its membership. Following the law, we aim for participation, and then as much as we can be effective and efficient with the uses of the cooperative's resources. The board of directors, was originally started actually by King James I with the Council of Virginia. It was designed to make sure that the investors who helped finance the colony were going to have their interests protected. So even today, the ultimate role of the board is to protect the interests of the owners, and that means protecting the equity of the co-op, making sure the co-op adheres to its mission, and then also protecting the assets of the co-op, or making sure that the assets are used effectively to meet the mission and protect equity. So for Orca's board, right now we have what's called an incorporating board. This consists of 3 worker members and 3 consumer members. After the general membership meeting in October, we'll have an election, or during that meeting, in which case the board will be divided between 2 consumers, 2 low-income consumer members, and 2 workers. Each board term will be 2 years. So for this first year, though, there'll be Each classification will have 2 seats elected. One will be for a 2-year seat, one will be for a 1-year seat. And basically speaking, the person who gets the most votes will be elected to the 2-year seat, and the second person, number of votes in that class, will get the 1-year seat. Then starting in 2021 and thereafter, each classification will elect 1 2-year seat every year. And that way you'll have a little bit of an overlap from year to year. So it won't be someone having a brand new board every year, and there'll be some knowledge. People can also run for re-election, and there's no limit on the number of terms somebody can serve. If someone can't complete their 2-year term or even their 1-year term, the board will appoint someone to that spot until the next general membership meeting. If there's a balance to the term, the membership elects for the final year in the term. So if somebody steps down in their first 2 or 3 months of being elected to a 2-year term, then it would mean that someone would be appointed to finish out the year, and then there would be a 1-year seat open as well as a 2-year seat for that spot. Okay. So the board roles, the board acts as a trustee on behalf of the membership, and sometimes in Washington you actually hear them referred to as governors or trustees, and this means they establish mechanisms for input and monitoring the co-op's finances and making sure the co-op follows its own rules as well as the appropriate regulation. Board also is supposed to ensure the sound management of business, selecting and supervising the co-op's management, although in this case, we're going to be using a staff collective, of reviewing management reports, asking questions, and then setting long-term goals and plans. So doing the long-term strategic plan, establishing an annual budget, and setting performance goals for the store and the staff. The being on the board, so co-ops are also corporations, and because of that, there's what we call the corporate veil. And this is, I think, pretty important, is that directors and officers are protected from personal liability. So if you decide to run for the board and get elected, you will not be held personally liable for the organization. Orca Books has a duty to defend the board in legal action against them as directors. The co-op also holds a $1 million insurance policy specifically to protect directors, officers, and staff from claims. And then to make all of this work, though, directors, and this is the core of being a director, must perform 3 duties to engage this protection. So the duties are duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. And what this means, essentially, duty of care is, as I've got listed here in the bullets, it means showing up prepared for meetings and asking questions. Sometimes you can ask the questions in advance to make sure the answer's there, but still you want the questions in the minutes. Avoiding conflicts of interest, and this is sometimes people get confused, like it has to do with personal friendships. It's really about financial conflicts with the co-op. And so if, for instance, you were the landlord of the building that Orca's in, you might not want to be on the board because there would be too much of a conflict there. Or you might at least need to acknowledge that that conflict exists and remove yourself from a decision about the lease, for instance. Also prioritizing business with the cooperative, prioritizing, I guess. Definitely directors should probably avoid buying books on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. They should really be trying to buy books through Orca or the different websites that Orca affiliates with. And then finally, duty of obedience, which is to make sure that the board and directors follow the bylaws and policy and obey all laws. So those are the 3 core duties that create the protection of liability. But there are also some responsibilities, and that is to represent the members, and that means communicating with members from time to time, establishing the priorities for the co-op, providing guidance to the staff collective, preserving the co-op character, and assessing the co-op performance and informing the members. These are all things that can happen on a relatively common basis, either through the newsletter or through meetings and agendas and how the board conducts itself. One thing the board doesn't do, and that would be, is to specifically direct staff in the store. So being a director doesn't mean you can walk in the store and tell people what to do. It means that you can have a meeting with the other directors and talk about what policies need to change operations in the store. And maybe have the board as a group talk with the staff collective to talk about things, but you can't actually order people around. And so this is kind of specific to talk about governance versus management. So the board's duties are, and I'll get more into this in a second, is to set policy, uh, approve the budgets. If the co-op needs to take out debt, it would have to approve the loan, again, overseeing management and long-term planning and furthering the mission. The staff, on the other hand, is supposed to implement those policies, and they'll do so by setting their own procedures, and they handle the daily activities, they supervise themselves, they monitor the business activity, and including complaints, and they report back to the board. We've broken down the board responsibilities into a couple different areas. The first is financial, so authorizing people to sign on behalf of the co-op, reviewing the long-term plans, and making policy changes, and fostering co-op member development and involvement. The second part of the board's plan is communication. And this is all from the current policy that we've created. So maintain free-flowing communication between board staff and committees, establish and review the cooperative's goals and objectives, and provide an annual report to the members to include a financial report, committee reports, and a summary of the significant events held and actions taken by the co-op during the year. And we'll be doing that in October as we get ready for the elections. And then finally is oversight. And again, making sure that the appropriate steps are taken in terms of hiring and job descriptions, ensuring compliance with all corporate obligations, including the keeping of corporate records, appointing committees as needed, adopting policies that promote the achievement and mission of the co-op, selecting officers, and then finally resolving any organizational conflicts after any other avenues have been followed. So if a customer has a complaint about a staff member, or if perhaps a staff member has a complaint about a consumer member, ultimately the board would need to step in to adjudicate that dispute. Also, I want to point out the officers. There are 4 officers currently: the vice president and president, treasurer and secretary. The officers are currently all directors. The president and vice president have to be directors. These are not corporate officers like you might normally think of. So the vice president of the cooperative, their main duty is to support the president. The president's main duty is to make sure that board meetings happen and that the annual meeting happens and that agendas are published and facilitate if necessary. The secretary's main duty is to make sure that the minutes are properly taken and that policies are documented and that the minutes are sent out to members. And then the treasurer's duty is to make sure that financial reports are produced and that directors and members have access to them. So they're not employees of the organization. Although the treasurer and secretary don't have to be directors and could be staff members, but they don't have to be. They could be any member of the co-op. So that's kind of the first governing policy that we created. We also created a code of ethics for the membership and for the board, and that is to basically it's within the ethics of the Orca Books Co-op to do no harm, put the cooperative first, engage in open and honest communication, seek solutions that treat everyone equally and equitably, engage in mutual self-help and responsibility, and then honoring our democracy and our solidarity, and promote social and economic development. And that this is sort of the guiding core values that are part of and within the cooperative identity. Our current policies, so we have an Articles of Incorporation. We've finished our bylaws, and our bylaws will be, they're being reviewed by an attorney right now, by the co-op's attorney, and we will have them ready for people before they run for the board. We have rules of order and organization of the board of directors policy. We've created a shared values policy, some of which I just discussed. We also have a social media policy about how to post items on Orca Books social media, including some that may be more controversial and less about books and then more about community. And then finally, we have drafted an election policy, and we'll be looking for members of the election committee to actually conduct the election of the membership and the new board of directors. So these are kind of the core policies for the business, and this is kind of the end of the incorporator's job, is to get these in place and to get the meeting, the general meeting, to happen. The rules of order will probably be something that gets reviewed at the first board meeting every year, so it's something that can be changed and adopted. It includes when the meetings happen and what needs to be on the agenda and how often the board meets. For the next year, the board has a little bit of work ahead of it because it is a relatively new organization. And so it needs these policies and documents. It'll need to create a budget for 2021. It will need to create a couple different policies that help the staff in terms of work practices and dispute resolution. Also, we will need to have some policies around what to do with the equity, and if there is a surplus at the end of the year, how to handle patronage refunds. And then finally, some just good standard policies like anti-discrimination, anti-harassment. It's better to do these policies when there isn't a problem to deal with, and have them in place to handle any problems that might come up, but also to provide clear direction on how the membership should engage within the co-op. Let's see. I mentioned earlier that we're using a collective or a consensus model. So the board of directors makes decisions by consensus, which means that we work towards agreement on a position, and if people block, it generally is because they feel it doesn't apply to the mission of the co-op. The staff collective also uses a collective consensus process, and so there are right now 7 members of staff, and they work and meet and then create procedures on how to do their work together, and everyone has a voice in that. And the way it works is basically no one person has authority to act unless the collective authorizes that work. And so they've been conducting the move this way in the conversion. And but again, this is something that every group can look at, and as time grows, and if the business actually grows and adds more and more workers, it may want to have a different model. But for now, this has been working pretty well, and that would be one of the discussions, is whether to continue using consensus at the board level, but the staff has their own process. So in summary, this went a lot faster than I thought, which is good, I guess. So in summary, co-op's governance is about establishing the ground rules for engagement within an organization, ensuring the co-op works towards its mission, and embracing the co-op identity. Orca's board represents 3 groups of members: consumers, workers, and low-income consumers. The board focuses on oversight, financial management, and communication. Directors need to understand their roles and responsibilities and duties. Directors also need to establish clear areas of decision-making between board and management, and if management fails to decide, then it's up to the board to step in to protect the co-op. And finally, the co-op needs to document the work of management and the board and be transparent to each other and the membership. And so part of this next year will be setting up a lot of these structures and developing this culture of openness and transparency. The directors won't have to do it alone. We will continue. I guess I should have mentioned first that part of my role is, while I'm currently on the board, I probably will not be on the board next year, and will maintain my role as a consultant to Orca Books on behalf of the Northwest Cooperative Development Center. And we'll be able to provide training to the board throughout the year and help with developing these policies and roles as the co-op grows. And so that's one of the reasons why I probably shouldn't really be on the board, because it is in itself a little bit of a conflict of interest. And so we're hoping to get a full crew of directors set up, and looking forward to an exciting first full year of being a cooperative community bookstore. And then finally, I always like to add this because I think it's fun. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. Nobody needs to be an expert to be on the board. What we want is people that care about the bookstore. And the idea of the co-ops is that people learn how to do things, and that in doing learning, they develop themselves and they develop their community. And so there we go. So I don't know if there are any questions. I went really fast, I guess.
How many people are on the board again?
There were a total of 6.
On the consumer group, 6. Okay.
6, and then and there are
That's
right
right.
now
Okay.
about 550 members, I should say. So we'll be able to figure out which group is in. Yeah.
So does one run from? I suppose I would be either senior, fixed income, or general member. But I mean,
Right. Well,
Yeah.
it kind of depends what you elected. So when you
Yeah.
joined the co-op, do you remember what you paid for your membership fee?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Well, we'll have to figure that out. We'll have to figure it out. So,
Okay. Yeah,
but,
that's fine.
so basically, the way the low income works is that it was a sliding scale between $25 and $99, and then
Yeah.
consumer member is $100, and you kind of self-elect to be in the low income group. It's not
Yeah.
something you have to. We don't force people to be in one or the other.
Right.
More
Right. Got it. That makes sense. Okay. And what are the steps to throw one's name in the hat? And do you have some dates for that general membership meeting? It's going to be a Zoom meeting, I assume, again. And
Yeah, it's probably going to have to be a Zoom meeting. But I think I think at the board meeting next Monday, we're going to finalize dates. We're also looking for people to serve on the election committee. So the election committee will probably create some forms, and I can send you the policies that we have so you can see them. But it's basically it's going to be self-nominated. So people just have to self-nominate and say they want to be considered, and then the election committee will arrange the balloting, and we'll be able to run the election.
yeah.
So it's going to be kind of creating the process for the first time. We'll probably base it off of what some other co-ops have done. We'll probably have to, given that people are kind of spread out, and of course we can't have an in-person meeting, we might have to have a couple different ways of getting the balloting in.
Right.
So that'll be part of the fun of being on the election committee.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm assuming you wouldn't have any questions of me as the person who showed up either. So got it.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is more for, letting people know what they're getting into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully I didn't scare you away. But,
No.
and like I said, we really would like to get, the representation on the board from all 3 groups and have six members. I know the incorporating board, a few of the people are on specifically, just to fill out this year, and they don't necessarily want to run again. So we definitely want to recruit people.
Cool. Okay. I'm kind of surprised nobody else showed up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it got. I don't know if it got how well it got promoted.
I don't know.
Yeah, we might have to do another one. I might just.
Yeah, I saw an email. So.
Yeah. I think maybe we needed to make a Facebook event or something, and maybe we could do that. So maybe we could just put this on the video too.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. That it